What is going on, everyone? It's Matt and Greg here from Project Unbroken. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and please help us share so we can get the word out about these topics that are very important. So, Matt, today we're going to be talking about how to talk to your child to prevent them from using drugs.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the biggest things for me is you got to talk to them, you know?
Absolutely.
I think a lot of parents, especially maybe those who have children who are into activities like sports or whatever the case, they often just assume it's not going to happen. Because I know for me and a lot of my friends, I ask them, like, how often did your parents talk to you about drugs? And they're like, never really.
Yeah.
So I think they just kind of assume. So I think step number one is don't assume and talk to them about it often.
Yeah.
I think if someone's talking to you about something often, you're constantly like, if that comes up, you're like, man, I don't know, I just had this conversation. Whereas if it hasn't been talked about, it's more distant and you're more likely to proceed into that action.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of big points here that come to mind for me. One of them is a lot of times I think parents feel uncomfortable having these talks even with their own children. I mean, it's funny, but it's kind of relatable. I know a lot of parents don't want to have to talk about sex with their kids. It's awkward. A lot of parents probably feel the same way about drugs. I don't know if it's a combination of just being in denial, like your kids never going to try drugs or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the first mistake a lot of parents make is by not kind of making it very clear about kind of what's going on with drugs. And I know when I was growing up, we had like the DARE program, and what DARE kind of taught us was there's marijuana, cocaine, heroin. They were all kind of on the same playing field as far as we were taught. So don't try any of them ever. And I never, eventually I tried smoking pot. Wasn't that bad. I had a couple beers. Wasn't that bad. Obviously, I tried cocaine and heroin, and they were bad. They were a lot worse. But nobody ever really had a realistic conversation with me, like somebody that had maybe experience with pot, and it's not necessarily a police officer or an authority figure that I didn't really know well. Like nobody had that conversation to explain the differences. Like, hey, not that it's okay, but marijuana and heroin, like there's a big difference between the two. But I think stuff like that, like you said, having conversations often can really go a long way just to make sure everybody's on the same playing field.
Yeah, and even DARE, I mean, what grade did you have DARE in?
Second grade, maybe.
And then did anyone talk to you about
they
drugs?
They had literally had like cartoon joints. Like, it was a joke. None of that stuck.
Yeah, so I really think, and it's pretty simple, that you have to have the talk. I mean, really, I don't think many parents out there do that. I don't think many parents consistently talk to their kids about drugs.
No.
It might be every here and there, maybe once a year. They're like, you're not doing any drugs, right? I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it happen with families where the parents just like, you don't use drugs, right? That's not good.
And that's and having the conversation like that is a little too easy. You have to dig. I mean, because if you go to your kid and you say you're not using drugs, right? The easy answer, because neither party wants to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. If the kid is having drugs, he's not going to be like, well, you know what, Dad, actually, yeah, I am.
He's like, of course I'm not. They're going to be manipulative.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to help you believe what you want to believe.
Right.
And they're going to protect themselves because they're being manipulative.
I mean, that has a lot to do with individual relationships between parent and child. But I think, parents in general are going to have a lot easier time long run if you do run up against your kid experimenting with alcohol or marijuana or whatever it is, and maybe the way you handle that will be a little bit different if you have kind of an eye on what's happening with your kid.
Yeah.
I mean, because I talked to my parents about it, and truthfully back then, when we got started with heroin, this was not on the radar. Like it was. I mean, now parents should be aware of pills, of heroin, of that slippery slope. It was not on the radar 10, 15 years ago.
No.
People were not, like, my parents were like, heroin? What are you talking about? Like,
we were like that. Even in high school, we were like, heroin? What?
Yeah. I mean, now it should definitely be on the radar because, again, kids go through this thing, and I think a lot of it is like they try, and it's all, very innocent, but they try smoking pot, they have a couple beers, somebody may have pills at a party. I mean, it's how it happens. And I think kids that have that conversation, where a parent can say like, hey, if you had a couple beers and you take one of these pills, it could be enough to stop your heart.
It's a really good point.
I
And
mean,
explain what we're explaining to you. Look, it can start innocently, but it's very easy to do it once. Once you do it once, it's like, well, I've done it, so I can do it one more time. And it really cycles. And I think kids need to understand that, and parents need to start having that conversation with them.
And again, I would try to frame this conversation in as a non-confrontational way as possible. I mean, this needs to be a dialogue where you're talking to your kid. Try not to come off as judgmental, as best you can. But you want to ask your kid questions. I mean, in a way that they feel comfortable responding to you in a truthful manner. And I know that's not easy for a lot of relationships and a lot of situations. But when you're looking at the long run of the your child's well-being, mentally, physically, across the board, these conversations are going to be really important for addiction and for other stuff.
Yeah, even like with my son now, he's 5. I'll talk to him about like smoking cigarettes. I'm like, that's no good.
It's yucky.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get that in his head now, like engraved that like that's not good for you. You know what I mean? And I haven't talked to him about drugs yet. He's only 5, but I think in the next couple of years I'll probably start talking about that little by little. And I want to make it a constant topic to help prevent that as much as possible.
And I mean, it's also probably a good idea to remember that kids watch what you do all the time. I mean, if you have kids that are really young, I mean, and a lot of people out there are social drinkers and have a handle on it, but you might not necessarily want to them to always see you doing that. It's
if you're in the kitchen taking shots while your child's running around, trust me, they're going to remember that.
Yeah.
I know me and my fiance will have conversations sometimes, and my son will repeat something we said, and we're like, he heard that? Like, he was listening, I mean, they really do pay attention to everything. So that's a really good point. Yeah,
they're watching when we don't think they're watching.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of stuff. It doesn't have to be verbal. It could just be the way you react to social, certain situations, or, the way you get when you drink. They're going to start making connections there, and, with whatever that is. So, I guess, overall, be open with that conversation. Have that dialogue going pretty consistently.
Yeah.
I mean, if your kids are at parties, talk to them about it. Like, maybe don't come off in a judgmental way, but let them know that you're there to answer questions they might have and make it clear what's going on.
And it seems so simple, but again, there's so many parents who just don't have the conversation because they just assume that it's not happening. And my kid plays sports and he works out and he hangs out with some really good kids. That means nothing when it comes down to it.
No, absolutely
so
not.
You got to have those conversations. And to bring it up in a way where you were saying non-confrontational, you can be like, look, I heard the story of these 2 guys. They were into sports and all that, and just makes I love you, so I just worry about you. You can say that. For me, I'm gonna tell my son, look, I thought I had everything under control, and then I'll start having that conversation with my situation specifically. So you can do it in ways like that where it's non-confrontational. Just look, I'm more, I love you, and I just want to make sure you're okay. That's it.
It's just like saying don't talk to strangers. I mean, it's like let them know the dangers that can arise from stuff like that, and it'll just leave them more prepared. It can be an awkward conversation. You probably don't want to get into an argument or anything like that, and it doesn't have to turn into one. But that doesn't mean it should stop you from having the conversation at all.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, simple tip, but very effective.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and please share this video. We're trying to get the word out about Project Unbroken and just help people that are struggling with addiction. We're hoping that someone out there might kind of be able to get some insight from our experiences, and we would appreciate any help that we can get. So thanks again. If you guys want to see us cover any topics, leave us a comment or hit us up on the contact section at www.projectunbroken.com.
See y'all.
Thanks, guys.